In 2015, Reddit user r.bradbury1920 left a mysterious post on Reddit's r/legal advice forum. The post was titled "Post-it Notes Left in My Apartment." r.bradbury1920 lays it out like this. On the 15th of April, I found a yellow post-it note in a handwriting that wasn't mine on my desk, reminding me of some errands I had to do, but told literally nobody about. While odd, I chalked it up to something I did in my sleep, thinking maybe in my half-awake state, I scrawled it so it didn't appear to be my handwriting. I threw it out and thought very little of it. Many of us have had strange coincidences or things we didn't remember doing. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he just forgot he wrote the note. But it doesn't stop there. In fact, it gets even weirder. He goes on to tell that a few days later he found another note, this time on the back of his desk chair. It was in the exact same handwriting as the previous note, but again, not his handwriting. The note was telling him to make sure he saved his documents, but what could that mean? Was it a threat or just a helpful reminder? Unsurprisingly, OP was pretty freaked out by this. He scoured his home, but there was no sign of a break-in. The doors and windows were locked, and he didn't find any evidence that someone else had been in his home. He thought about calling the police, but decided it would be best to gather evidence first. The next day, he bought a webcam. He was going to catch whoever was entering his space. The webcam was set up at his desk, with an app on his computer set up to record any time movement was detected. At first, nothing happened. There were no new notes, no recordings of anything out of the ordinary. Maybe this person just decided to stop harassing him. Maybe they got bored. It seemed like things would just go back to normal. OP would soon forget about this whole endeavor. But then, almost 10 days later, OP woke to find another note had mysteriously appeared in his apartment. This one, the most horrifying. It read, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important we do." Our landlord? Clearly at this point, either someone is messing with him or something more nefarious is going on. OP was getting very suspicious at this point. His best lead was that his landlord was entering his apartment. He didn't know what he could have done to necessitate this level of harassment, but that was the only explanation he could come up with. No one else would have been able to enter without a sign of forced entry. The doors were always locked after he found a note. After this latest note, he checked his computer for evidence of who had been entering his apartment. To his surprise, he found nothing. The videos were supposed to be saved to a folder on his desktop labeled webcam. He tested it to make sure it worked, and indeed it was working. He suspected that maybe whoever did this noticed the camera, noticed the folder on his computer, and deleted the files. He even checked the recycle bin on his desktop, and the bin was entirely empty. It almost guaranteed that someone had accessed his computer and deleted the files. At this point, paranoia began to set in. After all, if someone was doing this to you, you'd either think you were crazy or someone had it out for you. OP again considered contacting law enforcement, but he was afraid they wouldn't believe him or that he was making it up. He still had no proof other than the notes themselves, and honestly, any sane person would write this off as just a prank. OP continued on, hoping that this would end, and after a few more days went by, it seemed like the stalker was busy, or maybe realizing there was a recording device convinced them to stop, or at the very least convinced them to stop entering the apartment. Apparently, they did not want to stop altogether though, because the very last report of harassment was outside of OP's apartment. On May 1st, 2015, R. Bradbury found a blank note stuck to the outside of his apartment door. There was nothing written on it, but when he looked around, there were post-it notes on the doors of all of his neighbors. Nothing written on them either, but all different colors. This was honestly terrifying, and OP's post was a cry for help. Did he have any legal recourse here? Stopping a stalker usually requires an actual person to be accused of stalking, and he didn't have any real proof that this stalker existed. Ironically enough, even many people on Reddit didn't believe him. A few people writing comments like, "So the handwriting is identical, and the landlord wrote that the landlord doesn't want to let the landlord talk to you? You're probably sleepwalking. Also, I think you're making this up because you're not providing enough detail." Another user wrote, "Seeing a doctor should be your priority for 2 reasons. You could be having a serious mental or neurological problem, and even if you're not, that will probably be the police's first thought. If you have a general practitioner, make an appointment ASAP. They'll be able to get the ball rolling and make appropriate referrals. Bring in the notes and the sample of your landlord's handwriting so your doctor can look at them." Many other commenters went on to say the same thing. OP probably began to feel a bit embarrassed by this. He knew if people on Reddit didn't believe him, that there was no way the police would either. It seemed like there was no way to stop this. Either someone was messing with him, or he was actually going insane. And then, someone said something that actually made a lot of sense. Reddit user Kakerlak wrote, You seem sincere, and this doesn't appear to be the plot of a Ray Bradbury short story. It's possible that your landlord is leaving notes inside your apartment, but they don't make any sense in the context you're describing them. It's likely that you're writing the notes yourself, but you're forgetting. Do you use post-it notes as reminders in any other parts of your life or job? Yes, this might be a mental health issue. You might be experiencing some sort of dissociative disorder, or it might be a physical problem. You mentioned that you had a very unusual narrow bedroom with no windows. Is there a chance that you're not getting enough ventilation when you sleep? Or that there is a carbon monoxide leak in the building? A cheap CO detector, which you should have anyways, is a fast way to find out. You'll also have really bad headaches. A carbon monoxide detector? For context, carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas produced when fuels like natural gas, wood, or charcoal don't burn completely. Because you can't see or smell it, exposure often goes unnoticed until symptoms like headache, dizziness, confusion, or even loss of consciousness set in, which is why it's sometimes called the silent killer. Certain older apartment buildings with attached garages and poor ventilation could cause carbon monoxide to build up. It's not something that happens a lot, but it has been known to happen from time to time. In fact, in 2025, an apartment building in Kentucky was condemned after a carbon monoxide leak killed someone and left 11 others recovering from injuries related to the deadly gas. Of all the comments that were coming in on the thread, OP finally decided to respond to this one, and what he said was telling. I have had really bad headaches, and I actually already do have a CO detector. Guess I should probably take that out of its box and plug it in. If OP was inhaling carbon monoxide every day, it could explain everything, including why the post-it notes appeared in a handwriting that didn't look familiar to him. He may have been writing them to himself and forgotten entirely. A few weeks went by without an update, and people were starting to suspect that either OP was making everything up or whatever was happening to him, it finally caught up with him. Finally, weeks later, in a separate thread, OP decided to post an update. Thanks to everyone who sent suggestions and gave advice on how to proceed, especially to those who recommended a CO detector, because when I plugged one in the bedroom, it read at 100 parts per million. 100 parts per million. Normal levels are considered to be between 0.5 and 5 parts per million. OP's carbon monoxide levels were between 20 and 200 times higher than normal levels. For reference, OSHA's maximum permissible 8-hour workplace exposure is just 35 parts per million. Levels above that can cause all kinds of problems and eventually death as the levels get higher. After this post, it was clear that the post-it notes were never the work of a stalker, they were the work of OP, in a haze, slowly being poisoned in his own home. OP moved out immediately. The post-it note stalker became a Reddit legend because it played out in real time. To this day, the story is shared online as both a creepy mystery and a cautionary tale. If you take anything from the story, check your smoke and CO detectors, replace the batteries, make sure they're working, because sometimes the scariest thing in your home isn't a stranger, it's something you can't even see.